So, Trousseau, going back to the originator, the first guy to make the tie between diabetes and hemochromatosis, they already knew this, right? They found that these increased iron deposits in the people with these conditions. And then Dr. Sheldon thought the same thing, right? This progressive buildup of iron is clearly not good because he's only operating with sick people and they all have this common condition of those organs and they all have iron in them. So my question is, how did we not follow through on that, right? So yeah, Dr. Sheldon was right about the genetic inclination to iron overload. They found the HFE gene and its ties in 1996. But he was also right, and never given credit or never followed up on, about the implications on the health of the tissues in a state of chronic iron overload, right? So all of these people coming in with bronze diabetes and hemochromatosis had extra iron in the organs, the liver being the main focus, right? Because that was ultimately what was causing people's death, was the fibrosis and cirrhosis and just liver failure in general. But they never closed the gap in seeing the effects on the other organs, right? So what happens if a pancreas goes to failure with this iron? What happens if the brain? What happens if the reproductive organs, the kidneys? What if they stay in a chronic state of iron overload? And again, the CDC isn't shy about what iron overload does. They know, right? Cirrhosis, liver cancer, heart damage, arthritis, and joint issues, right? Because of that tie between bone marrow and blood, right? The liver is sending iron to the bones for red blood cell. Too much iron, it's going to affect the red blood cell development and how much iron those bone cells have. And diabetes, they say it. They say it on the website. There's a tie between hemochromatosis and diabetes. So, man, I kind of jumped the gun on this. I've already talked about it a little bit. But I'm going to move my head here. I've got all these reference numbers down at the bottom. These will correlate with a citation guide I have at the end of this. And it's pretty wild, the documented numbers we have on file now. About 50% of people with hereditary hemochromatosis, that's that HFE gene, develop diabetes. Both type 1 and type 2. Both. 50%. How are we missing this? About 30% of those with hereditary hemochromatosis die of cardiac-related complications. Hello, heart disease. 700,000 people die a year of heart disease. No association with iron. Why aren't we talking about this? And then I talked about it a little bit before, all of the other chronic conditions and complications that everyone seems to be dealing with on a quote-unquote autoimmune basis. Low libido, low testosterone, hair loss, osteoporosis, gut dysbiosis. The list goes on and on. So when I read about this, I was like, I could not believe my eyes. I could not believe my eyes. So, I mean, in summary, documented connection with diabetes. From 1865 up till now on the Center for Disease Control's website, high rate of comorbidity between hemochromatosis and diabetes. A documented connection to the degree of iron saturation of the tissue. The more iron in the tissue, the more tissue damage happening. We have already talked about in previous episodes on the oxidation, the effect on oxidation, the effect on creating ROS and instigating inflammation that iron has. So that makes sense. The more iron it is, if it's not, the more iron there is, and if it's not being handled properly, it's going to create inflammation. And then the network. There isn't anything the liver doesn't touch in the body in some way, right? So because it's backlogged in iron and it needs to put all of these extra iron pieces someplace, it started to share the load. And those organs that it's sharing the load with are starting to fail. From the brain to the reproductive organs, heart, gut, you name it. You name it. I would put my bottom dollar that if we were to measure the degree of iron in those tissues, there's something going on there. So, all right, Bowie, you rouse the troops, rah, rah, here we go. But what do, right? So there's little to no representation in the mainstream research. We still don't have a great way to determine how much iron is actually in the tissues, right? Currently now it's, you can take an MRI of particular organs to see the degree of iron overload. But again, huge costs. Huge, we all know, we're all familiar with the way the medical system works and how expensive MRIs are. So it's probably not most people's first go-to when it comes to developing a condition. Like, okay, yeah, just MRI it. So not a lot of info. And if there's not a lot of info, that's something that the medical system can hide behind because, well, I'm not going to ask for it because there isn't a lot of consensus on whether or not it's, it needs to be better represented in the research for me to want to do it. So that's a catch-22 because no, it's not research, so you can't use it. But you're also not able to look into and validate that it needs to be looked into to fund the research. So it's like we're just kind of stuck not getting anything done. So it's up to us. How do we get rid of iron? How do we know if we're iron overloaded? And is there something that you and I can do so that we don't have to wait for the medical community to catch up? Because they are behind on this one. So that's what we'll cover in later episodes. There is a way to get rid of iron. There is a whole supporting network of nutrients, vitamins and minerals, food-based, supplement-based, that will help regulate and rebalance our system and get things operating in a way that does not incorrectly place iron in tissues where it does not belong. Okay, so there is a way. There is a way